Ride the Wave Media and Novel Daybreak by Crescent Communities present The Witch Movie Project.
All right, Courtney, here we are.
I'm so scared.
We got this is the found footage version of our podcast here, The Witch Movie Project. If you can't tell already, the first movie is the Blair Witch Project. We named the whole project after this movie. Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. We were also kind of lazy. We just said The Witch Movie Project. But
Yeah. It started to grow on me, and then it just became, that's what it is, because it's a project for us. We're doing this. Yeah.
this thing together. And this week, the two movies on deck are, to me, they both defined almost a new type of genre.
Mhm.
You got the Blair Witch Project, which was one of your original, the granddaddy of them all, found footage horror movies.
Yes.
We'll get into that and how that found footage movie, it like leaked into real life. Like, yeah.
It's incredible.
The other movie we have is the A24, represent right there. I got my limited edition A24 shirt on. It's the A24's The Witch, or the VVitch, as it's spelled out, the VVitch. That movie in its own is, to me, another almost new genre defining type of film. I mean, you got something that's set in the 1630s. It's historically accurate. There's no real, jump scares and stuff, sure, a little bit, but it's not your typical horror movie. It's an atmospheric horror movie, really.
Yeah.
A
lot of cinematography that goes into that. Yeah.
Creepy woods. Both movies got the creepy woods. They're building this atmosphere, and it all builds to these finales that are basically, in the film lore, stuck there forever. Now, the end of the Blair Witch Project, it's not a spoiler. The final scene of the guy standing against the wall, that's if you show that screen to somebody, they're like, oh yeah, oh shit, that scared me. That's the Blair Witch Project, you know? So,
yeah. I saw a rumor. I mean, this is like internet rumor. Tell me what you think. But Stephen King even said his son had tried to show it to him, and he said, you got to turn this off. It's too scary.
Now, let's get into this. Let's just go ahead and start with the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
And what you just said right there, I don't know if this is true or not, because that's what this whole movie brought up in real life. All the way, let's go through some of the stuff that they set up in just the marketing. The Blair Witch herself, I believe the lead actors thought that was a real myth. Does that make sense? A real myth?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
they were led to believe, and then people thought after the movie came out, the Blair Witch was real. No.
Yeah, you have to remember, this is like 90s, 99. This is when internet was starting to really become like a regular, useful thing. More and more people like being able to create their own websites and use the internet for different things. And so I was just aghast, because I obviously was alive during this era. I'm a little bit old, just a little bit. But yeah, I remember the Blair Witch coming out and it being a huge like debate. Everybody being like, this was real. They found this real footage, all this like talk about it. And I'll admit, I didn't see the movie back then.
Oh,
I don't know. I must have missed the craze. I'm not sure what I was doing, but I remember in researching this and seeing that they created a website to say, to market this movie and to say, we found footage, and everybody believing that. That kind of going viral, if you will, if that was even a thing back then.
Oh, it was, yeah. Now,
yeah. And everybody being like, oh my gosh. So going to the movie theaters thinking they were looking at real footage of people who'd gone missing and died in the woods.
Excuse me. Not only that, but in the marketing for this thing, the three main actors in the movie, Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard, were reported missing in real life, not outside the movie. Before the movie released, they reported these people missing. as a PR stunt. So there's all these things, like you said, in the time period, in the 90s, this is before misinformation really hit the internet, like you said.
Yeah. So people are like, this is real. If I'm seeing it, it's fact.
I did see this in theaters. I remember going through this and feeling this craze. I even remember I was pro wrestling at the time. I was a pro wrestler. I was a backyard wrestler at the time. And we held an event called Halloween. And the flyer for their event was the Blaze Witch Project. That was my name. I was Blaze. And it was my eyes like that. And it was we used
the iconic scene.
And I remember people even thinking that was out there because they were like, oh, well, how does their event tie into the Blair Witch? It didn't. It was the Blaze Witch. It was me. So
yeah,
it was all deliberate and a very, almost a prank.
Yeah.
Like it's almost a prank on everybody to pull the wool over the eyes of the world. Because nobody, like it was more polarizing of is it real or not than is it good or not.
Right.
And that to me was interesting because both these movies, you got Blair Witch and you got The Witch, they are both polarizing movies in their own right because you got two different spectrums. One side will say, oh, this was boring. Nothing even happened. I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
The other side will say, oh my God, I was fucking terrified the entire time. There's really no in between.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, okay, so I've known of the Blair Witch Project and the movie for all these years, all this time. And maybe I should be ashamed to admit this, but this is the first time I actually watched the movie in preparing for this today. I watched it twice. So
okay.
in research. So the first time just to enjoy it, just to soak it in, just to see it for the first time and be like, okay, it's finally time for me to see this movie and see what it was all about. And I will admit, the first time I watched it, I was like, that was it? Because I was a little surprised at how little happened when so much was happening, right? Like, I guess I was just a little taken aback by it. Like, wow. So all that lead up and all the like running through the woods and the jostling of the camera and, seeing different kinds of weird little things happening throughout the movie. And then it ends with that, creepy, iconic ending. But like, then it's over. It just ends. And I was like, that was it? That's crazy.
Now, once again, that's going back to the period of time that it released in, because this was way before your A24 type movies with no happy endings. You got happy endings back then. You got the good outcome.
Yeah.
Not here. So when the credits rolled, which a lot of people forgot to read the credits, it says it basically says in the credits it was made up. It's just real small. So when the people in real life went searching Maryland for the Blair Witch after this movie came out, if they'd have read the credits, it would have said it's not real. But it was there. Yeah. I mean,
now that did not impede my love for the movie. Like but I think that the real like genius of this movie, well, I don't say real genius. I mean, like there's a lot of genius to the movie, the way it was filmed and what you have there, what you're watching. But the whole story around it, like we're talking about, all the build up and the, almost pranking the world with this movie is kind of the more impressive part. If you think about it, like I just am amazed. I mean, Heather Donahue's mom, even well after the movie was released, people should have known by then, but she was getting sympathy cards in the mail. So people were like, I'm so sorry, your daughter's dead. And she's like, she's not.
That's insane. Like that just goes to show the power of it.
Yes.
This movie.
Yes.
And then after this movie, thousands upon thousands of found footage horror movies have come out. Not all good. I will say I love watching them. AMC has a great documentary. Shudder has a great documentary on found footage movies. You should check that thing out if you haven't.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And all of the people going out to make their own movies in the woods, all
Yeah.
these people going out to experience something creepy or like this in the woods after this. They said the 1999-2000 hunting season was the worst year on record because so many people were in the woods filming their own little documentaries that it scared all the wildlife away. That's incredible.
I will say I was one of those. I was out in my woods in Tennessee, and we were filming documentaries out in the woods, but I had my beanie on. We were ready. We were looking for witches. We were looking for them. We were looking for anything out of the ordinary because, hey, we just saw a movie hit the theaters and make tons of money that had this that we thought might have been real. So why wouldn't people hit the woods, go look for Bigfoot, go look for whatever things they think are out there? What's funny is the camera that they used in the movie for Blair Witch, I had the same one. Most people did. They bought that thing at Circuit City. I don't know if you remember Circuit City. It was long before Best Buy.
Yeah.
Best Buy put them out of business. This is probably why Best Buy put them out of business. It's because people like the creators of the Blair Witch returned that camera to Circuit City after the 8 days of shooting that it took to make the Blair Witch. So they got their refund to bring that budget down a little bit more. But
yeah. That same camera was then sold for $10,000.
That's wild, is it not? What a fact. What a fact.
An auction. Yeah.
This movie,
Relic.
Though,
Movie
what were you
history.
thinking when you watched it? Just from the beginning, you got them all happy. You got them at the Burkittsville sign, which that thing's been stolen 3 times now. But they're out there.
Movie history, right? Movie relics.
Maybe we should go out there and find that thing. Is it still there?
I don't know.
Next
Probably.
season, I'd like to have that Burkittsville sign behind me.
That would be such a fun trip, wouldn't that? We could go to Salem, Massachusetts. We could go, we go hit up Maryland. We could see all these little spots. It would be amazing.
Oh, I'd love it. But so from the beginning, what was your initial thoughts going in and seeing them in the car? And then, they're playful. They're all this. They're talking about this. What were you feeling? Did you feel like you were immersed in it enough, or were you an outsider still?
I was maybe sort of, my actor self was being real critical and kind of listening in on the conversation and being like, how natural do I feel like this conversation is? Do I feel like it's scripted? Do I feel like they're stiff? And I did feel kind of like that almost we don't know each other that well awkwardness in their banter, right? Which, I mean, that would just be natural. It would be like, with some young people with access to camera making themselves a little documentary, would they be like, let's film each other getting ready and packing up, and I'm going to tease you while we do it. And then the switch from that to when they would actually film something, even like at the cemetery or things like that. And you had Heather being like documentary voice going on. This is the town where the blah, 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 blah. And you saw like that shift. And then the camera would switch back to just the banter. And it was like the F word would come out and they would just be like, blah, 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 And so I was paying a lot of attention to that. Like, how do these characters interact? Like, does this feel natural to me, or does it feel like it's very like stiff?
You know what? It's a good lead up to when you're watching the beginning. It's a very good lead up to see how they're going to react under stress later.
Yeah.
Because when Heather, Mike, and Josh, they get lost, scared, they start hearing creepy noises. They're in the tent. This is now you're getting up until this point. It's just your full-blown classic setup for a bad night in the woods. Like something bad's about to happen. It's this almost happy, and you're just going, you kind of go downward all the way. Like you know what I mean? Like that's how it felt to me. From the atmosphere, you got the shaky cameras.
Mm-hmm. Everything just like, and the fact that they didn't have a cameraman, they had the actors. They were like, we're going to give you guys like a crash course in camera work and how to use the camera. And then you're going to shoot the whole thing. And we're just going to be out there. And the actors signed something that said, I'm okay with you messing with my head. Like, messing with your heads. So they knew going into this, like, whatever reaction they want to get out of us and to be in this movie, it needs to be as natural as possible. So they're going to mess with us.
And that banter and everything in the movie that seems so natural is because basically they were not given scripts. They were given a 35-page document that outlined the mythology and the plot of this movie.
Yeah.
Side of that, they were supposed to do this. They were supposed to just ad-lib, banter at 42-ish minutes in when the tent's shaking.
Yeah.
Not scripted. So that's a real reaction.
I didn't know that was going to happen. Could you imagine? They signed up for this and it was probably terrifying. So, and the fact that, like the legend of the Blair Witch, they gave them that and told them it was real, that this was a real legend. This was a real town. This was real. And then I had to look into it further because the interviews with the townspeople at the beginning was really cool. Everybody they interviewed seemed so natural, so realistic.
Yep.
They told the actors, the three main actors, that they were real townspeople. And I would have believed that too. I would have been going into it being like, oh, wow, these townspeople, the one that intrigued me the most was the woman with the child.
Thank you.
Ingrid. And the child kept covering her mouth and she was like, I know it's just a scary story. Don't worry. It's not true. It's really true. And she's just like,
that little piece, Ingrid, right there, to me, almost without that, the rest of the movie, it takes away from it a little bit. It doesn't ruin the movie, but if you don't have that little piece, for some reason, to me, it stuck out. It felt genuine. Yes, the kid covered her mouth. The kid was not covering her mouth because she knew what she was talking about. The kid was just covering her mouth, like she was ready to go.
Kids just being kids, right? But it made that whole sequence in the interviews, and you have to really like listen to what they're saying. The guy who made the kids stand in the corner while he killed one child, and then he would, that's all like foreshadowing, right? And it's all important. You have to like really pay attention to what they're saying. But could you imagine being the three main people and hearing all this, thinking it's real, thinking they're real people telling you this? No. And then going into the woods to film.
And you're just out there. Like they are out there and hearing stuff, not knowing what's going to happen, thinking this might be a little bit real, not knowing. And you got the directors, you got people messing with them night after night. There's one crazy scene in there where it's pitch dark. The cameraman's running out. They're running and they're saying, oh my God, what the fuck is that? Oh, what the fuck? What is that? At that moment, it was so intense that there was a moment, there was a screen. It was supposed to be a pan to the left where you actually saw the Blair Witch. You would have seen a white dress, but the cameraman, so frantic, didn't make that pan left and they never reshot it. So the Blair Witch didn't make it in. To me, that's crazy.
Are you curious to see what that would have looked like? I want a picture. All these years later, if they don't have a picture of that Blair Witch and what she looked like, they need to release it. I need to see.
I mean, it's got to be out there how she looks. I think it's in later movies. I think they made some movies, and
I haven't seen
them a little
yet.
more.
I'll have to watch them next.
They made some movies and they're a little more Hollywood-fied. Like it's not the found footage type stuff. And to me, it kind of takes away from a little bit of what they did. They add more layers to it. There's actually a movie called The Blair Witch, and it's basically a remake of the documentary. Not good.
I've heard not good things, but which is why I didn't go into that even when getting ready for this today. I wasn't going to go and like watch all these other things. I wanted to just be like, hey, fresh from this movie, watching it for the first time, and then kind of looking into all of these interesting facts behind the scenes. And I was really intrigued to be like, so in watching it the second time while taking my notes was just like, I mean, I was probably like nose pressed to the screen, like looking for every detail, like what's in the dark over there? What are they listening to? What is that sound? Yeah.
What'd you pick up on? Anything crazy in there?
So I think the second time I watched it, I was paying more attention to what sounds they were hearing because it seemed like every night, right? And the tension is building as they're getting more and more lost. They're, Heather's like, in the beginning, she's totally like, I know where we're going. I don't even need the map. I know where we're going. I've got this. And you can see like the tension between the three characters. And then at night, there's like sounds that wake them up, and she's trying to record. She wants to get that on camera, wants to get the sound on there. There was, I think it was the one you're talking about when she yells,
what is that?
what the fuck is that? They're like, start running. I think it was children sounds.
Oh yeah.
Children laughing, a baby crying. And I guess the director had like recorded kids playing outside and then played that on speakers at night when they were sleeping in their tent. So that's what they woke to, is listening to like children playing, singing songs, and babies crying. So you hear her say like, there was a baby crying, and he's like, there's no baby out here.
Yeah. I love that part. And it just, to me, so this is what polarized a lot of people, is that you got all this frantic stuff going on. It's shaky. People are in the theater getting sick, but there's people out there who are like, I didn't see anything. This was awful. Like, what is this? But then you got me on the other side who's like terrified. Like, I get it that it's almost like Jaws. In Jaws, you don't really see the shark. You don't see him. You don't see Jaws, and that's a whole story in itself. But this is the same type of situation. You don't have to see the evil or the fear to know it's there.
Yeah. It's almost like, I wonder the difference between people who have a very vivid imagination, so they fill in the blanks themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm a very imaginative person. That's just who I am. I've always been. So when I watch something like the Blair Witch, I don't need to see what they might be seeing or experiencing, because my brain and my body is filling in all the details myself. And I'm like, this is terrifying.
Exactly. That's what it does. And this movie did a great job at that. And it's, like I said, it was one of the first of its time to come out with a found footage style. We have the most terrifying. I mean, there's the shot right there. Like,
in the corner.
When he's standing in the corner, and that's how it ends.
Yes.
Haunted people for a long time. This image is stuck in people's minds right here.
Yeah. Just like the up close, up the nose interview was parodied and made fun of and brought back over and over again for the next decade after this movie came out.
I mean,
like iconic images of this movie that no one's ever going to forget.
Even now, we just started this whole episode. We just started talking about this with a little homage. We got our beanies on. I got my flannel on. Like, I'm ready for the Blair Witch.
Oh, the plaid shirt.
Yeah, that's it. Like,
yeah.
This movie, though, it really did change an era, change the way we thought about movies, regardless of how polarizing it was. I mean, some of the best things out there are the most polarizing. Let's be real.
Yeah.
What were your final thoughts on? Well, go ahead. You got something else?
Well, let's just touch on some of the things that they found in the woods. And I do want to mention that Wiccan people, people who adhere to the Wiccan faith, if you will, didn't particularly like this movie. And, no surprise, it's because they're like, you make witches look bad. The truth is, the movie was created out of the folklore of witches being in the woods and the woods being evil, right? And that has existed since the beginning of folklore, typically coming from a Christian background. A lot of those fairy tales and folklore we know about were designed, created, written, and told to warn children and warn people about the evils of the untamed wilderness, right? So you have that idea. It's like, yeah, it does make witches look bad. It does make, certain symbols like pentagrams or a lot of people get scared when they see symbols like that. And even when they go into the woods and they have the piles of rocks, they get scared because they're like, who put these rocks here?
Yeah.
And the hanging kind of weird symbols and things that are in the branches. They like walk around, they find the voodoo shit, you know.
Let me jump in on there and tell you the most unbelievable part in the whole movie. And it's when it says rednecks can't be this creative. Yes, they can. I know rednecks. I lived in Tennessee. I've seen more creative stuff than that. So that's the most unbelievable part in the whole part. The whole movie is when he says rednecks can't be this creative. Yeah, they can.
Okay, so we're offending witches and rednecks all over the place here.
Go ahead, though. But tell me more.
Yeah, you're right. That's totally true. And honestly, that's just one of the natural, even as children, we have these natural tendencies to want to create magic by bundling sticks together and making potions with mud and leaves and herbs and whatever we find in the forest, and you know, things like that. It's our natural, like, that's how kids play, right? When they see all these like hanging cool, like, you know, stick symbols and things like that, and there's like one that looks like a hanging man, they had like sculpted it into a twig man. All of that is symbology of certain things, in it can be totally made up from someone who doesn't know anything about witchcraft, or it could be intentional, like I'm going to make this hanging man and it's going to represent someone, and you know, putting it up there. Either way, I mean, it's all kind of part of that, you know, society, that sort of like symbolism that the wilderness has.
That's awesome. That's great to point out for people out there who are picking up those little pieces. And there's also some knowledge, I guess, that the Blair Witch, it might have been based on the Bell Witch, which the Bell Witch was in Tennessee, and there's a whole story about the Bell Witch basically attacking, mostly invisible. The Bell Witch was invisible too, kind of how the movie was, and attacked this Bell family. So it's kind of loosely based on that, but
pulled from some folklore, things like that. Well, in most of the folklore that you see witches in, they're going to be in the woods because they're kind of an outcast from society anyway, right? Baba Yaga, you know, those stories. But even stories like Red Riding Hood, or you know, most of the fairy tales and folklore we know have something to do with don't go in the woods, right? Yep. That the woods is where evil lies, or darkness, or the devil. And so if a witch is going to converse with the devil, and we're going to go into that in the witch movie, but it's all going to happen in the wilderness or in the woods, because they believed, well, at least that's kind of the Christian come from, or the Christian ideology was that wilderness is bad, that anything natural and wild is conducive to evil, that we need to be tamed. We need to be, you know, our personal nature, but also the wilderness. So in order for like colonists and, you know, coming from England or Europe to come and colonize America, they would be like, well, we need to tame the wild. We need to convert the savages. We need to bulldoze this area of all the trees, make a house, put fences around our property, make our animals, put them into pens. Like we are going to tame all this wilderness. It's manifest destiny, right? So that is where that whole ideology comes from, is that, you know, careful of the woods because that's where evil lies, right?
How do you feel about the woods? You like the woods?
I love the woods. And most people, most pagans, and even non-pagans, I mean, I think most people will be like, actually, I feel the most spiritual in the woods, in nature. When I go out, I feel my natural self come out. I'm embracing the wildness of who I really am. Yeah. And that's connecting with the trees and the wilderness. There's danger in the wilderness. You have to respect it, right? The bears and the wolves live there. And they're just doing what's natural to them. They're not out to kill me. They're just going to do what's natural. So you have to respect that balance. You have to respect nature. So, I mean, that's where the kind of conflict, I guess, comes in when it comes to like why the Wiccan people would have been upset with this movie, is like, you're trying to make it look evil. You're playing into the whole idea, right? Which I think is just like, yeah. And every other story that's ever been made about the woods from the Christian perspective, right?
Pretty much. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. And I want to get your final thoughts on Blair Witch before we get to the witch and get more into that. So final thoughts. Would you watch this movie again? Did you like it? What stood out? All that kind of stuff. What do you think?
I love this movie probably more for what it is, how different, how innovative, how just different it was made and all of that. I don't know if I need to watch it a bunch more times. I would watch it again, I guess, but it's like, okay, I've seen it. Yep. I know what it's all about. The movie itself, I've picked it apart minute by minute. So I'm like, I'm good there, but I'm just like, I'm more impressed and wowed by the making of it, I guess.
That's where I'm at. And this movie came out in 99. This is 2024. Kind of held up, kind of didn't hold up in some regards. There's other found footage movies out now that might be better. Definitely a whole lot more that are worse. This one definitely started it. I do love that to me, it's a piece of art.
Yes.
It's a piece of art in every kind of way, because you had the real life bleed in. You had all that kind of stuff going on in the press, the PR, with the movie itself. Like, the movie itself was fun to watch. Not only that, this thing only made, it cost $60,000 to make. Well, hold on. $59,550 because they returned that camera to Circuit City.
Right.
Made $248 million. For every $1 they spent, it was about $11,000 in return. You don't get that anywhere else. There's never been another movie. This is the top budget to box office ratio movie of all time. It's hard to ignore that they did some stuff right and did a lot right to set the stage for what came later. So that's my final thoughts. I love the movie. I wish I had the picture of the Blair Witch Project out there. It was one of my first wrestling performances.
I mean, if you want to get the effect, I could just grab my camera and like run around the house for a minute. But yeah,
shake it real hard. You got to. I mean, honestly, cameras today aren't even made for that. Like your iPhone camera, they got auto stabilize in them and all this stuff. You can't even get those kinds of shots.
You can make a movie far better with your own phone camera nowadays.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's get to The Witch. Robert Eggers, A24. I caught this movie late at night. I'd put it off for a long time. It came out in 2015. And I don't know. I don't even know if I watched the trailer. I'd probably heard it was boring. I saw, it's set in the 1600s. Ugh. How good can it be?
Everybody's worried it's a history lesson.
And it kind of was. It kind of was. It was very true to the times. I mean, I wasn't there. You were there. You were around in the 1630s, apparently. But this is
life is so much more hard back then.
What's fun? What's fun and ironic about this is that this is set in the same time period that the autopsy of Jane Doe, her body would have come from, apparently.
Yeah.
This is the time period. So now we're watching, this is where Jane Doe's time was. So I tried to look at it like that also and think, where's Jane Doe in the middle of all this? This movie, though, the atmosphere, it's bleak. It's dreary. It is
a lot of gray skies, and they use natural lighting in almost the whole making of the movie. So even like they just use like a 3-wick candle kind of thing for the candlelight, but for the most part, it was just natural lighting, which made it very dismal, right?
And it fits 1630s, because if I'm thinking 1630s, that's about what I would expect it to look like. I would think, 1630s in the winter, out on the farm, in the woods. And let's just get to it, because the way that the movie starts, they basically get banished from.
Yeah. I actually had to like look into this first part a couple of times, because it starts almost like in the middle of the story.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Like, they're banishing him from the village, but why? You don't really get, like, it's not super clear. You have to kind of decipher it based on what he says and what they say. And as close as I can get, and from what the forums on the internet, people have kind of like discussed it. These are the Puritans, right? So you have like the core of a lot of witch trials and things happening in England back in like the 15th century to the 17th century. That was carried over into those witch trials happening in the 17th century in New England, here in America. Well, this is when the Puritans leave England because they don't believe the King's Church is rigid enough, right? They're allowing too much. They're taking too much liberties with the gospel. So we're going to be more pure. We're going to go by the gospel in pure, ways. And so thus the Puritans are born, and they come from England to America, hoping to be able to create a community where they're going to be real strict with their religious, fervor, like their devotion and all that. And I think what they're saying here in the beginning is that the father of this family is like, you have become too lax. We came from England. We set this community up, this village. We sacrificed so much so that we could be here and practice our faith. And you are too lax with your faith. I guess meaning that he and his family want to be more strict than even these Puritans. And so he's banished to go live on his own.
I mean, we see how strict they are later on. Like they are very, very strict in their religion, and they are banished. So the family is exiled from the Puritan plantation. Then they go set up camp in a dense, dark forest. I don't know why. Why would you pick that place? Like, what did it have?
I imagine that there was just enough of a clearing to be able to clear some of the trees and make some structures so that they could, have protection. And I mean, again, they're coming from a mentality or a mindset that wilderness is evil.
Yeah.
Okay. So like the trees, the forest, their idea of that is there's nothing good out there. So this is a clear enough clearing. We can set up our, safe space, and fences, and maybe have some protection from whatever the wilderness is going to have in it. I mean, wolves, things like that.
Rabbits. We're going to get into the rabbit symbolism because there's a lot of rabbits in there.
Yeah.
But the movie, when they go to the farm, they get exiled, they move out. Things already the downward spiral begins because right at the beginning, they're already on edge. They get on edge. They're already on edge because they left. And then the baby disappears. Not a good start.
Creepiest part, I have to say, like just about anybody. I don't know anybody that wouldn't be watching a movie and be like, don't hurt the baby.
Yes.
Don't get babies involved. Like that's the peak of horror to me. Is like, you really want to rattle me? Put a baby involved in the horrors of what's going on. That's
the baby disappearing at the beginning is it lights the fuse to that slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
The slow burn of tension. It makes the rest of the movie, you always feel like something's lurking right out of sight. Like you said, the natural light makes you even more immersed in what's going on. You're in the woods. This movie is another classic example of A24 being able to isolate you with them.
Yes.
And bring you into it. Like it's almost like you can't pause the movie. You can't leave the room. You can't get out of there. And you're stuck in the 17th century and it's scary. It's scary as hell. Like you're there with them. And a lot of people will say that's boring. Now, I didn't think so because sure it is if you are watching that movie and you're in the 2024 or whatever you're at. If you're in this present time and you don't try to put yourself where they are, sure it's boring because guess what? They're not all doing this. They don't have TVs in front of them. They don't have all this.
And you know what? They had too much work to do to be doing any of that anyway. There was not a lot of idle. In fact, again, idleness is a sin. So they even, you hear them reprimand each other for that. Like, what are you doing sitting idle? And like, how dare you be idle? And yeah.
I love the verbiage. I love the spoken dialogue. I love the way they talked. I mean, the title itself, the vovitch, the two V's, that's on purpose because the letter W was not common yet by then, by the 1630s. So even the title itself reflected historical accuracy, which I
Takes you
thought was
back.
great.
Yeah, it's called Jacobean English, by the way. And they were going to have a backstory for this family that they had come from Sussex in England, but the director liked the father. You'll have to tell us his name, the actor, and he's from Yorkshire. So they decided to change the backstory because they liked his accent so much.
That's Ralph Ineson. Now,
yes,
that guy's voice, you're talking about that because he plays the main character in The Witch. He plays William.
yes.
Now, Ralph Ineson's voice, gravelly.
Yeah.
Now,
He could read me some bedtime stories at night. I'd be okay with that.
I think the tone of his voice fits this movie so well.
Yeah.
Because you are forced to listen. Now, I'm a fan of his because he did Loreth's voice in Diablo 4. He's a video game character voice also. So
that's why. Yeah.
His voice, I was like, oh, I know this. You know, it's distinct. Let's talk about the director because you mentioned him, Robert Eggers.
Yes.
Now, Robert Eggers, who, by the way, let me tell you, he's got a new movie coming out Christmas this year. Guess what Robert Eggers just did? Nosferatu.
What?
Nosferatu will be dropping at Christmas this year. He made The Witch. He made A24's The Lighthouse, which had Robert Pattinson in it. That's a great.
Oh my gosh, that was, yeah.
That's a weird one. As they all are. So this guy, I can't wait to see what Robert does with Nosferatu because that's a horror classic there, and you know that's the one with the vampire, and that's an iconic scene of Nosferatu. That was a silent movie too, so I can't wait for that. But that's coming out this year.
Okay, all right.
But The Witch, he put so much time and effort into The Witch.
Yeah, doesn't he have like a carpentry background or something? And they had to make everything from scratch for this movie. They didn't have anything that was like authentic to the time period. So they had to make it.
Which is awesome. I mean, that's what they did then.
Yeah. Like, let's use the materials we have around us.
They weren't ordering shit on Amazon and getting it sent overnight. Like they had it their own. Let's get back to the movie. Let's talk about where your baby disappears, you got stuff going on, and then baby Samuel vanished.
Yes.
Under Thomasin's care. Go ahead. You had something there?
Well, the folklore behind witches taking babies and children is very common. You hear that a lot in a lot of stories. One, they told this to children, first of all, to scare them into behaving, which, you know, could be effective if, you know, you don't know anything about psychological trauma. But they told that, you know, don't behave. If you don't behave or you don't stay out of the woods, the witch is going to get you. And witches like to eat babies. Hansel and Gretel were going to get eaten by a witch in the woods. This is very, very common in folklore. But it might originate from the fact that a lot of accused witches were midwives. And midwives were helping women with their reproductive needs. So whether they needed help in birthing a baby or getting pregnant, they also helped with abortions or with contraceptive herbs, things like that. So you can understand how in some other faiths, they might have demonized midwives as witches who kill babies, right?
Yeah, it totally.
That might be where that comes from.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Now, is there any kind of symbolism with the silver cup that gets, or am I jumping ahead here? Because once they established that Samuel disappeared under Thomasin's care, you've already got the hint that she may be a witch. Take us to when Catherine blames Thomasin. Catherine's the mom. She blames Thomasin of stealing that. It was a silver cup. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah. It turns out the father had stolen it or had taken it and traded it so that they could survive. And the corn was dying. This family is not doing real well with their banishment, which again, you have that isolation you talked about. And it's like, that's what it meant in those days to be isolated. It meant death. I mean, whether you have a witch hunting you down or not, being a family alone out there in the wilderness trying to kind of make their own little settlement work, that's almost impossible anyway. But I do want to point out, like, the corn was failing. Okay. A lot of times in the new settlements in New England, corn was failing because they didn't have corn in England. When they mention corn in older texts, they're actually just talking about grain. So they're talking about oats and barley and things that they had in England. When they came to America to settle here, corn was a new thing. It was a new kind of grain. And the natives, the indigenous people of the area, always grew corn with beans and squash. They called them the Three Sisters. Shout out to Braiding Sweetgrass. This is straight from that book. So if you haven't read Braiding Sweetgrass, I totally recommend it. But they talk about the Three Sisters, right? So they're not growing corn appropriate, like the way it's supposed to be. There's not enough nitrates in the soil without beans to be able to cultivate corn. So their corn is failing. They're going to starve. He has to sell the silver cup. And symbology wise, silver cup or chalice is a very a balance of it's a very feminine character. Okay. So the silver cup that's missing is, you could call it its own character. It's the chalice, or the symbol of the womb, and silver, the symbol of the moon and female energy. So, I mean, you could almost replace it for every time they talk about that silver cup, they're talking about femininity.
I love that. So that's great symbolism there, and greatly explained. I got a whole other take on this movie, because you mentioned the corn. I'm going to talk to you right here, and I'm going to tell you what the actual meaning of this movie is. And there's no witch. There's nothing. If you pay attention in the background, the corn is rotting. It's got a fungus called ergot. Now, ergot is something from that is a basically infestation of corn. Now, here's what it'll do without people knowing. And you can see the corn deteriorating in the background, and I know it's got ergot. It will get, basically, it will, this is the symptoms that you can have from ergot: is convulsions, muscle spasms, vomiting, hallucinations. You could watch this whole movie and think, hey, they're getting poisoned by the corn and they're hallucinating. I'd love for people to watch it again and have that in mind. And then it's not a horror movie. It's a whole other kind of horror movie. I like to think
100%.
I like to think there's a witch there, but I did want to point that out, because the corn rotting in the background, I think there's something to that. And ergot is that fungus that gets into people's nervous systems and can cause you to have hallucinations, convulsions, all the pain, vomiting, all the stuff that we see later. So what do you think about that little theory I put out there, the corn being fungus?
That makes perfect sense too. I like that take on it, because I was going to ask you, did you think that Thomasin was a witch the entire time? Or is this like the good old story of I wasn't a witch until you made me one kind of a thing, like in Jane Doe?
Now, I like the theory about the corn being poisoned and having fungus and them just hallucinating, but I'm a witch fan, so I'm going to say there's a witch there. I'm going to say that she's a little more on the witch side than Jane Doe was before Jane Doe became a witch. I think Thomasin might have been at least interested in what witchcraft, what was going on, that kind of stuff. You see it later with Black Phillip, the goat, like all these things are coming together. And I think Thomasin might have made a pact. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think there's something actually to the twins having made some bargain they weren't aware of. I mean, they're just children. They're playing and having fun. And if a goat talks to them, they might be like, okay, whatever you say, Black Phillip the goat.
Yeah.
And the little girl Mercy is singing songs about Black Phillip, their goat, the entire movie. And she's like, I'm a witch, clickety clackety, clickety clackety.
Black Phillip, that's a reference to Baphomet. I mean, that's Baphomet, which is the, devil reincarnate, I guess, if you want to call it that. But the lyrics in the song, Black Phillip eats the lions from the lion's den. Like, there's some really, really vivid stuff in there that when we see it later. We see slaughtered lambs in the stable. Black Phillip standing there. All this is in the climax.
Yeah.
Lyrics to that song are just disturbing, unnerving, all that. And the kids are singing them. Once again, you got the kids doing the dirty work, making me feel, ugh. Like,
and maybe they're not aware of what they're doing or what's going on, but I think they play a part in what ends up happening, like how the events play out. Because from the very beginning, and let me just give a shout out to all the oldest daughters out there. I'm an oldest daughter, okay? And I just want all the oldest daughters, I see you, okay? Here's Thomasin doing her best. She's out there like cleaning out the stables, and the twins are running amok, being goofy and silly and not minding her at all. And then mom comes out and is like, Thomasin, why aren't you taking care of them? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Go help your father clean up. And then she's like, okay. And she's trying her best to do what she's being told and trying to take care of everybody. And all she gets is criticism. Mom's on her case all the time. Mom's accusing her of stealing the cup. Mom is always like, even when Mercy's singing songs, Thomasin's like, hush, I can't stand your songs. And instead of, admonishing Mercy, Catherine, the mom, is like, Thomasin, stop. Thomasin, hush. I'm like, poor Thomasin, man. She just has like no control of her life. Yeah.
Bad for Thomasin. Let's go back to the Mercy and Jonas, the twins, the kids. Yeah. Are they twins?
Yes.
Yeah.
I called them twins a couple of times. Yeah.
So you might be onto something there, because there's a part in there where Mercy and Jonas are unable to finish the Lord's Prayer. During the witch,
I made note of that.
Yes, during the witch hunts, as you know, during the witch hunts in colonial America, it's widely believed that a witch could not finish the Lord's Prayer. That's why the family gets so upset when Jonas and Mercy stop.
Yeah.
So maybe
it wasn't Thomasin who stopped. Thomasin was trying to say the Lord's Prayer, and it only stopped because the twins were like, I can't. And then they freak out, right?
Yeah. Nobody could finish it, really, I guess. So were they all witches? Did they all make a pact? What happened there? May have to watch this again, huh? Because
there's a lot going on.
We hadn't even gotten to like where we're talking about the movie. Like, Caleb goes on a hunt. They go into the woods, and then do we see the rabbit here, or is that later?
I believe they saw the rabbit when Caleb and the dad go out hunting.
That's right. This is when he sees the seductress witch. She's tries to get him in. She would have got me. I'm gonna tell you now. If I would have been a 13-year-old boy out in the woods.
But again, this is bringing up the ideas of sin and natural, right? So Thomasin's body is developing naturally like a woman's body does. And I'm sure she doesn't fit into her shift as well as she used to. Her brother Caleb has noticed. I mean, he's a young boy. Like, it is what it is. But here we have this, like, again, contrast between like what is natural and like what is like just her living her life, and the sin of being a woman and being desirable and being a maiden, right? In the bloom of womanhood. So here, like, Caleb comes out and he gets tempted by this witch in the form of a maiden, of a very desirable woman.
I mean, buxom, is that a word we could use? I think. Right?
Poor kid, he didn't stand a chance.
He didn't. And then he comes back home in a delirious state. You got the possession. This thing's disturbing. This scene right here was rough. And this movie's only an hour and a half long. Did it not feel like it was like 4 or 5 hours?
Yeah.
Long.
There's a lot of pieces to it. Of like, yeah.
When he is basically convulsing and whatever else you want to call that. Have you ever seen anything like that happen in person?
I have not, but I have heard stories of people who are like, oh, I've witnessed a possession. I've witnessed, this or that. However you decide to believe, whether it's a psychological episode or a spiritual possession of a demon, I don't, whatever you believe. But I just have to say, this kid is amazing. I mean, that scene was so, whoa, he must have had a great acting coach getting him ready for this scene and having him just don't hold back, right? Don't hold back. Let it all out. Because the emotion was so powerful.
Now, that kid's name is Harvey Scrimshaw, and he was a serious powerhouse in that movie. They all were. Thomasin, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. This is her debut. Debut. She's gone on to have a
love her.
She puts on a great performance in this movie. Everybody does. We already talked about the gravelly voice of
yeah. And I have something to say about the mother too, but I will wait until we get to the ending and her ending and how that plays out. But she's amazing in everything she does. I like her too.
The rabbit. Tell me about the rabbits, because Caleb and his father go into the woods to hunt also, and here we go. We got a rabbit here. Now, what's the symbolism of hares in mythology here?
Well, in Celtic lore, this is from my Druid deck. They symbolize rebirth and intuition. Now, a lot of folklore around witches, not from a pagan perspective, but from like general how we view witches, they have familiars, or they have, or they can shapeshift, right? There's a lot of that going on in folklore as well. Like they can shapeshift into animals and things like that. So the hare shows up in this movie at certain points, I think, where it's like there was a hare and then there was a witch. I just listened to a story this morning that comes from a Welsh storytelling where a guy is staying in a hotel and he sees these cats trying to steal from him out of his bag or out of his wallet, and he cuts one of them on the paw. And then the next morning, two of the ladies who run the inn he's staying at, she has a hurt hand. Ooh. So it's like those kind of stories you hear a lot, like where it's like they're in the, you never see the hare and the witch in the same place at the same time. So I don't know, maybe shape shifting is going on. Maybe that's what we're meant to believe here. But in folklore, they really are associated with like Ostara and the rebirth, like the hare and the eggs, which are Easter bunny type symbology.
So tell me, if somebody pulls this card in a tarot reading, what does this say about that person?
The way that I would read that, and I have the guidebook and I can read what that says. But for me personally, I would say it's something about a new beginning for you, or a rebirth. That kind of like in Thomasin's experience here, she's going through a big change from childhood into womanhood. And what that could mean for her is coming into her power as a witch, right? She's this innocent, godly girl. She definitely wants to follow in, what's right and good. But man, that's just not working for her.
No, I mean,
it's not bringing her anything but criticism usually. So this is kind of her transition into being like, and you see that when she speaks up to her dad, when she's like, hey, listen, you're the biggest hypocrite I've ever met. She would not have said that earlier in the movie. She's very devoted, very submissive to her father, her mother, to authority. And then it's like, now, wait a minute. I have something to say, right?
It's like a rebellious teenager. It's like she hit the rebellious teenager phase. And instead of cursing, she cursed other people. Like that's what it looks like to me. She made a full-blown transformation in the movie. I want to say almost from innocence. I think there was a little bit there. There's a little hint of something there.
Well, then you could just say that's human nature too. You could say there's a little bit of that in all of us. It's not, yeah.
And that's what I think, because you could say there's a little bit of that in all of us, because we all conjure up whatever we want in our own ways. She was doing it in her own way, and the climax of the movie is when all the family turns on each other. All these scenes of possession, paranoia, basically good old fashioned witchcraft right here, and then you get the thing with Thomasin, Black Phillip. That's, to me, the master class in filmmaking and building dread and suspense. Because when she finally signs that book, like, that's it. No going back. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
What did you think about that? What about Black Phillip overall? Tell us about Black Phillip and the goat lore. I already said it's Baphomet symbolism, and him speaking to Thomasin. The twins said they spoke to him. That's what got this whole thing kind of started earlier in the movie, in the plot, was that this goat stable attack where the twins said, Black Phillip told us, like, what is Black Phillip, and what is his role in this? Is this just a goat, or is there something in that goat?
Yeah. Well, again, like animals being a familiar to a witch, there's a lot of folklore in that, and it can be the goat, the cats, birds, ravens. You see the raven.
Yeah.
Right. We'll talk about that in a second. But Black Phillip, I mean, this is just another, again, shape-shifting. He shapeshifts into, I guess we're supposed to believe, the devil, right? He's the devil, and that's the devil's book. And this is more like when you look into kind of the symbology in Satanism, the goat and things like that, and the ram having to do with something to do with the devil. I'm not as familiar with that folklore, because to me, it's more just about all of the animals being of the natural world, right? But I will say that in general, that whole witch in the woods, the boy being bewitched, the goat being Black Phillip, and signing the devil's book, and then being one of his coven, one of his followers, or whatever it is. To me, this is just an entire movie made out of the fears that the Puritan people in New England had at the time, right? Most of us now don't believe that any of that was going on. I doubt in the time period there was a lot of women who were like, yeah, I kind of just feel like it'd be fun to go in the woods naked and run around and dance in the woods and sign the devil's book. Like, this would be so fun to me. But this movie is kind of like bringing every fear that all that folklore had and the hold it had on people and bringing it into a movie. Like, what if it was real? Like, what if this happened? This is what it would look like, right? So the goat is the devil. He's the one that's been whispering to them. It also brings the fear of, because there's a very religious connotation in all of this, which is that the devil and the evilness of all this going on could happen to anyone. You could be as faithful and true to your faith as possible, like this family was seemingly in the beginning. The mother says it at one point. She's like, I was so close to God and Christ's love. I could feel it. I could relish it. I never even needed the love of a husband because I had this love of Christ, and I've lost that. I've lost my faith. And she's confessing, but it's like, there's a realization here that you can be as good, I use air quotes for those of you who can't see me, good as possible, right? And still be susceptible to evil that could come in and kill your whole family.
Right, and it does.
Yeah.
And one way or another, everybody ends up dead except Thomasin. And then she treks out naked.
Yep.
The rest of the witches, which that's not okay. I mean, it's not witches. country's basically witch festival.
Yeah.
And every year, April 30th to May 1st, that's Hexennacht. And that's Walpurgisnacht. And what happens is all the witches go up to Brocken Mountain and they get naked and they dance and they have a wild orgy with the devil. Now this is real. So how many places around here have naked witches running around the woods? Is this a common thing, or what is this?
I personally don't know of any, but what the ceremony of that, or what doing that would be, would now symbolize anyone who is coming into their own power and leaving the expectations and the idea that being tamed is good and proper, but that letting your natural self be loved and embraced by the energy of the world, that's kind of what that symbolizes.
Yeah.
It's not about dancing with the devil or signing the devil's book. In fact, that would be almost patriarchal, right? That would be like, okay, I'm giving myself up to what another male figure. I'm his slave now. Most of the time, what it symbolizes is, this is me shedding off all of the masks, all of the expectations of society, my clothing, and being able to just embrace the natural world, the woods, the fire, the elements, the dancing, the music, the drumming, and just be able to embrace being wholly and authentically me as myself, on my own sovereignty, right?
Yeah. So there's some truth in there, though, is what you're saying. Like, I mean, there's the lore of the 4 naked witches. That's part of the German Walpurgisnacht.
Walpurgisnacht, yeah.
The 4 sorceresses seen in a brothel, all that kind of stuff. And then the movie The Witch itself, the ending when she starts floating away. And did you find that as a happy ending because you are a witch?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, I have to say, I was like, all right,
yeah,
sounds good to me. And a lot of that could have to do with some of the hallucinogens and mushrooms and some of the things that that witches and participated in, or people who were called witches. It's not like the witches flying on a broomstick. Some people believe that folklore came from the fact that they would rub their broomstick with hallucinogenic mushrooms and things like that, and then go flying, right? Because in their mind they were flying.
Sounds like a good time to me. I mean, I'd try that out. I don't know.
Yeah. And to me, this is just like, again, if it was a symbol, it would be Thomasin going like, okay, my family's dead. Like, what else am I going to do? Sure, I'll sign your book.
I mean,
and then going out into the woods and being like, I'm free, right? Like, I'm now floating with these women have nobody telling them what to do. I mean, if you take the devil out of the equation,
yeah.
But I don't have anybody telling me what to do anymore. I don't have expectations to follow. I am my own person. I'm in charge of myself and I'm free. And that floating feeling is like coming into her power.
To me, we could compare Thomasin to the main character, Danny, in Midsummer, when she goes through all this hell, and at the very end, it's only her standing and she gets that little smirk on her face.
Yes.
Thomasin, at the end, when she floats off, that's her smirk. That's her smirk on her face. I think she got a happy ending. So maybe I'm wrong about A24 movies. Maybe they do have happy endings. Who is it happy for? You know?
Yeah.
What's your final thought on The Witch?
I think that the thread of both of these movies is, again, the idea of the wildness and wilderness, right? And being able to ask the question, is it our job or is it our purpose to tame that wildness or embrace it, right? Like, is what's found in the woods actually evil, or is it just our own shadows, our own natural self that we need to confront and face? And maybe for too long, we've been believing that it's something that is to be shied away from, avoided. It's evil, it's dangerous, it shouldn't be interacted with at all. And maybe it's time for each and every one of us to go into those woods ourselves, whether physically or metaphorically, but into the woods and confront your shadows.
I love that. That's a great final thought. My final thoughts on the VVitch. The Witch was it was incredible watch. It is a exhausting watch. It's a miserable watch. Like, and I mean that in the best way, Robert Eggers, if you're listening. It's a miserable watch, but I loved it. Like, I know when I put that movie on ever again that I'm going to be depressed. I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be down, but I better finish it because, yeah, I kind of get happy at the end when Thomasin wins because to me, she wins. And I want to throw this out there about Robert Eggers. He did an interview and he was talking about the best behaved and worst behaved of the actors and animals, and the hare, the raven, and the horse, all easy to work with. Black Phillip was a bastard.
Yeah,
Not
he looks
fun.
like it.
The shot they have with the dad and he's wrestling him, that wasn't scripted. You can't script a scene like that with a goat. There he is. There's Black Phillip. You can't script a scene where you're wrestling a goat's horns. That was crazy. I can't believe it. I hope he
That
got
was terrifying.
I hope he got paid extra for that. But love this movie. It was another, to me, new genre defining type of movies, subgenre, whatever you want to call it, to pagan folk horror / witchcraft, all that kind of stuff. Can't wait to see this Nosferatu movie that Robert Eggers is putting out. And anything else A24 has. We've got another A24 movie in this series coming up, Hereditary. You've never seen that one. I can't wait for that.
No, I haven't seen it yet. I'm just getting into that one. Yeah.
You wait.
Oh my God, Courtney, we're back.
Or maybe I should do this.
Yeah, that standing in the that's it.
Fun episode we've had here though. With
Those who can't see me, I was standing in the corner. Okay.
Yeah. As she was recreating the iconic last shot of the Blair Witch there. That's a nightmare-inducing shot, though. Really, it is. Like you see that,
Yeah.
you're like, oh shit! Like
And so fast.
it is.
I had to go back, rewind it, and watch it again just to make sure I saw what I thought I saw. Yeah.
Man, but those two movies right there, The Witch, The Witch, and
Mhm.
The Blair Witch. I love those two. I love those two flicks right there, and that's gonna be a tough vote. I don't
It
know
could
where
be a
my
vote,
vote would
yeah.
go between. Yeah.
All right, people. So you got to get out there. You got to vote. You got to decide out of those two movies, which one did you like best? And vote for all of the ones in the past episodes as well. Make sure
Yeah.
you vote so we know what are your favorites.
And I gotta give myself a shout out for having the A24 limited edition shirt on here because the VVitch was A24.
Yeah.
Well, Edgerton. Was that him? Was he the one that did it? Man, he's got a movie Nosferatu coming out Christmas this year too. We may have to break that one down.
Yeah. I'm all for it.
Yeah. But until then, we're getting closer, Courtney. October 26th, Novel Daybreak by Crescent Communities presents the Witch Movie Project live podcast taping and movie screening and costume contest. Don't forget, Land of a Thousand Hills coffee shop right there at Novel is going to give us prizes for the costume contest.
Yes, I've got gift cards. So if you love coffee and drinks at Land of a Thousand Hills, you're going to want to win this contest.
They've got seasonal stuff going on right now too, like different witch type drinks. This is perfect for us.
I had the chai and cider yesterday. So good. So good.
What was that one called? You remember what that called? What was it called?
I think it was just called chai and cider. Chai
Where
and
did you
apple
find that?
cider. It didn't have a clever name. It wasn't the Witch Aid, but I was trying to find something good.
Who came up with those names? We need to talk to. Was it the owner over there, at Land of a Thousand Hills? I wonder.
I'm not sure. I have to ask her. Yeah.
Yeah, or
shoot her a message.
They got a bunch of great baristas over there, though. It could have been some of those kids working over there. They're creative.
Yeah.
I love those people over there.
I've been doing my Tarot for Tips events on Sinner Sundays
Yeah.
over there, and they're amazing. They like to give me a free drink if I go over there to read cards, and they gave people 15% off their drink order for me reading cards for getting a reading. So I love them over there. I think they love me.
Yeah, they do.
I love it.
Yeah, they do. That's incredible. Let's give a special shout out to all of our sponsors. Novel Daybreak by Crescent Communities, Prism Healing, Live Cake Parties, Pure Sweat and Float Studio, South Jordan, Ride the Wave Media. We're all here. We're all helping out with the Witch Movie Project. I'm proud of this project. This thing's really rolled on, and we're already talking about there was some more movies down the road. So
Oh yeah,
we'll
we're
tease
gonna
that
keep
a little
this
more.
fun train going.
We'll tease that a little more in the following episodes. But until then, we'll see you guys next week.